GMGM, welcome to our first all hands meet of 2025. 2024 was a big year for us, and I wanted to kick us off with a retrospective. Typically, in teams that I'm like kind of working on more full time, I would do these way more often, but it's good for us to remember kind of to do them once in a while because it is oh yeah, 2024 was a big year. I'm not sure if I mispronounced that or missaid it, but it was a really big year for us. 2024 was the year where we launched our first product, or not our first product rather, but our signature product, the BCard. We did launch a couple of other projects before that, including Taxman and the Vault, but this was the one that we were aiming for from the beginning. So that was a really big year for us. And it's good for us to remember just to take some time to reflect. I think that is probably one of the things that we can do that will allow us not only to improve ourselves, but also allow us to do it in a way that can be like a regular and resilient and kind of like long-lasting thing. And so as long as we remember to reflect, we can improve. And if we don't reflect, we can't improve. So it's really important for us to take the time to reflect. And so that's why I want to start with this retrospective. I'll start with a quick attendance. Links are Christy, Drost, and Tom Cranmer, NF Thinker, Shelby McStuffins, and Winverse. All right, nice. Okay, and so an introduction, just in case you don't know what a retrospective is, it's an agile project management tools used to help teams continually improve. And the intent, again, is to reflect on the time between now and the previous sprint and identify opportunities for growth. We're going to talk about our goals, things that went well, things that didn't go well, open question, and ways to improve. So to get the most out of this session, I just want you to remember the following two things. One, be honest and open. I think it's really important that we get your feelings out there. All of the things that you feel, they're valid, right? Like no matter how you might feel or how someone else might feel, your feelings are always valid. And so your perspective is appreciated. If someone's feeling the way that you feel, their chances are that someone else is also feeling that way too. So I think it's really important to just try to be open and honest, and to help enable that. Let's reserve judgment if we can. Let's try to listen to each other and resist the urge to talk about solutions in response to people's problems. Really, what we're trying to surface, especially at the beginning of this, is to surface the problems, right? And so really, let's try to explore those problems more so than solutioneering. We will have time for solutioneering, after this, and even at the end of this meeting, we'll start talking about it a little bit. But I think the big thing is to surface those problems. The intent being that if we shed a light on things, it's more likely that those will get fixed. And that's a value of the blockchain as well, that kind of idea of transparency. And so be honest and open and reserve your judgment. Any questions on that introduction before we move on? Okay. On the alignment side of things, this space is really for all of us to get on the same page. We have this kind of context that we can have that's shared, kind of like, I guess, like we could say like facts, or kind of like the where we are on the field. But in general, I show this every time we're at a retrospective. We are now in the build for fit phase, and I would say like this is probably the longest, most difficult phase generally. And so, these two phases, validation and build for launch, these took us 2 years, right? And it's because of the way that we're building our team as well. We intentionally weren't working on this full time. We intentionally were kind of going a little bit slower on this validation and build for launch. And this build for fit phase, it may take a while, right? That's the thing. But ultimately, in building for fit, the intent is that we have something out there in the world. Now we need to connect three different things. One, what the users need. Two, what we can provide those users, and be the best path for us to provide value to the users. So that is kind of those three things that we're trying to figure out. That's what people will call product market fit. That you're able to provide a solution for a user in a way that they're able to consume. There are lots of products that provide solutions for users, but they're too difficult to use, right? And so that's what we're trying to do in this build for fit phase. Now, some metrics since the last season. So I looked at our last retrospective, which is in May 2024, so it's 7 months. Since then, we've had 36,000 more in transaction volume. So that's not bad. We had 3,000 before. We added 58 users to the card, and we have 8 more communities deployed. So we did get some stuff done in the last 7 months. On the intangible side, these are things that weren't in our metrics, but I still think are worth mentioning. We got accepted and participated in our first accelerator. So that was really great. We got our first crypto curious community, Open Medicine Foundation, which is also a 501c3 community. So very much a purpose-driven community, and one I think that will be really useful for us to continue digging into. We got some user deep dives showing our gaps and areas of improvement, and we have filled a lot of those gaps too, in fact. We created proof of concepts for in-app voting and the endowment fund at the end of last season, and we started to get better at communication, campaigns, emails, and our social posting, which was one of the big themes from our last retro. So things that we did well from our last retro, resilience was a big one. We survived and we have a working product and something on which to build. There's also some talk about how our team continues to show up, which I think is really important, especially, I mean, you could say it's a bull market right now, but it honestly, it doesn't quite feel like that yet to me. Async work is also something that people put up there. It's interesting and part of the future that we're trying to build. The idea that we're doing this in kind of a DAO-y way. Now, you probably know I don't like that term DAO too much, but the idea that we are building a different kind of organization, a different way of working is really interesting to people, and the team is very supportive. Now, some things that we could do better. Our communication outside the team is a weakness. In general, I think we got a little bit better at this over the last 7 months, but we have a lot more. We have a longer way to go on this. This is, I would say, it's still probably one of our 2 big weaknesses. And then Delta, we're slow on multiple fronts. So there was some talk about how we were slow with our partners, some talk about how we were slow on our communication, some talk about how we were slow on a couple of other things. You can go ahead and check out the retrospective if you want to hear more, but in general, we're slow now. And the idea was not, okay, we are slow, and it's somewhat by design. You know, no one's working on this full time. We're not VC funded, and we don't have the pressure from investors to work fast or die. But were there ways that we could improve? So can we use automation in some ways? So, you know, Drost is using automation to help us with some of our social things. We are using some more automation. Tom created some more automation for our monthly flows. We added more tools to allow us to do our kind of like monthly rewards reconciliations and stuff. So we did do a little bit of automation, and it did help for sure. Now on the retrospective side, oh, sorry, any other questions or comments on our goals, our intangibles, themes from the last retro, or anything else on the alignment side before we move into the retrospective?
That sounds pretty spot on to me.
Nice. Great. Okay, so let's get into our retrospective. So this is where we're actually going to try to reflect on the previous season. So I'm going to go around to literally everyone, but I want to make sure that everyone has their say. If you're not able to speak, feel free to put it in the chat. I can see that too. And what we're going to do is we're just going to try to identify things that went well and things that could be improved. That's all. Feel free to just say them. I'm going to note them because I think it's important that we note them down. But yeah, pluses and deltas, things that we did that went well and things that could be improved.
Just throw stuff out there. I would like to say the operations and dev team really like stepped it up and kicked a lot of ass in the end of last year, all throughout last year really, but specifically at the end. You and Tom really pulled the rabbit out of the hat, so to speak, and were able to provide excellent updates to the app. You ran a very successful beta. You successfully onboarded many people and made sure that their transactions went through. You kept up great comms with Transcard, And I think on a regulatory standpoint, you were able to really answer the call when it was needed. So great job to the tech team.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with with our ability to respond to transcard regulatory issues too. I think that was really important, and ultimately, excuse me, I think that our app is a little bit better for it. I think like the UX isn't as good as it could be, but the user data is safer, and that's important.
Yeah, that's important. It's extra important to be compliant, especially at this stage. And we don't want things to kind of creep back up 2 years later and people start to question how we were doing things. So in that sense, it's also great to have Transcard as a partner because they can guide us on compliance. I would like to see a lot more work done in the compliance area, I think, this year, because I don't know, when we were starting this up, after speaking to a number of people, I did connect with some compliance officers, and we certainly can't overlook that. That's going to be key to the longevity of this project. Any questions? I can't hear you, Lynx.
No, I was just taking notes. Yeah, I do agree, especially because the regulatory landscape in the United States is changing. I think like it's an active change, and it's very likely to change potentially rapidly next year. And so we want to be
Yeah,
able
there's a lot
to
coming in the pipeline.
exactly. I see that as well. Winverse posted something additional content shorts provided by Drost, the audiograms. I want to +1 that because I think that
+2?
I think, yeah, +2 it. Yeah, I think like that kind of so I keep getting emails from LinkedIn saying that we're on a roll and that we should continue posting and that kind of stuff. Like that kind of regular drip of content that surfaces our values. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It's really important. Like it's important because not everyone is gonna get BCard on their first touch of it, but if they see it over and over and over again, and they see that the values that we're expressing match their own values, eventually they're going to be attracted to us. And I think that that's the thing that we wanted to do with our communication is become a beacon that people can be drawn to. And so those short form pieces of content, they really help plant the flag.
Thanks for that. On the other side of it, and things to be improved on that piece, I really need to get a lot better at it. I'm spending way more time on it than I should be, but it's partly learning, right? I'm learning. I just started, like we were talking about it before the meeting started. I just started playing with Claude AI, gosh, 4 or 5 days ago, and then doing some of the things that you were talking about, links with Notebook LM, and kind of learning a little bit more about prompting and some of the things that what its capabilities are and how to get it to communicate more in your voice. But anyway, getting more to, and not getting into the details. I know you don't want to do that. The weakness here is turnaround. I spend too much time directly editing. I need to use AI more to help me surface the relevant content and to get it to have a better pipeline, I guess. And so that's one of my goals for that, because I don't want to be beholden personally to a deadline where I'm on like some treadmill of having to pump stuff out and having to be creative every day. On this particular thing, it's just it's taxing to do that. So I'm looking to use AI as a way to offload some of that mental work and to help me with faster turnaround.
Exactly. I think like because we're a small team, because we are an async team and a part-time team, I think it's really important for us to be able to use some of these automation tools. And I think that those automation tools are going to be a leverage for every single person going forward. So they say that your job is not going to be taken by AI, it's going to be taken by someone using AI. And so I really think that if anyone here wants to get better at using AI, not only will it help the project, but it's also going to help you too, right? So feel free to take that time here at BCard because I think that it's going to be, I think it's a win-win.
All right, I got a couple. They're a little bit personal, but I would think the things that went well from my perspective was I was really proud of the features that we shipped. I thought we had an eye on improvements and making things better, and continuing to push the envelope in terms of what the capabilities of our app are and what we want the product to be long term. Excuse me. I think in terms of improvements from a personal standpoint, I'd like to spend a little bit more time on proactive coding, like preventative maintenance and cleanup type coding, because I think that if I'm focused too much on driving towards new features and building, sometimes I forget to go back and tidy things up. And there's software maintenance things that are always good to keep in mind, chores for the future for myself. So that's it.
Yeah, I'm gonna plus one that. Like, I'm working on Taxman right now, and I think that it's like, we got something out and it's usable, and I think like going back and taking the time to make it even better means we're gonna end up with a better product, something we can be proud of, something that we can use not only for ourselves but to help other kind of people in communities as well. So I'm really glad that we took the time to polish our features. That's what I'll put as a plus. Actually, it's one of the plus I have written down. We didn't turn into a feature factory. We took the time to get feedback, polish up features, polish up funnels and workflows to make sure that our app is resilient and long term. I think that that's really, really important. And guess what? Obviously, there's a lot more that we could do, but it's super easy, especially in this space, to kind of just throw a million things at the wall and see what sticks in terms of features. That's what a ton of people are doing. I really want it to be more intentional, and I think that we were able to do that because of the efforts of Tom, because of the efforts of Zooty Bear, and just like being able to take the time to refine some of our features. I mean, just even like the onboarding flow, I think we probably spent more time on the onboarding flow than anything else this entire year. And honestly, we're better for it, right? Like, our onboarding flow is one of the things that users say is great. And even though we have such a huge break in our onboarding flow because we don't we have to get users to ACH, even though we're doing that, people are still willing to do it. There was someone who was contacting me over the Christmas break and was just saying like, "Oh, this sounds really interesting. I want to use it." And then they were like, "Oh, but I don't want to ACH. I'm not going to do it." And then a week later, they sent me a screenshot of they just ACH'd a couple $100 in, and they're like, "Look, I did it. It was way easier than I thought." Right? And so I think that person, I didn't provide them any support. They figured it out on their own. They were able to do that through our onboarding process. And if we had just gone from that to in-app voting directly and other things, we would have created it ends up just giving us a leaky funnel. So I think it's really good that we take the time to refine to make things good.
Yeah, no, I really like hearing about the ability of the onboarding funnel to use a limiting system like ACH, because it just shows the actual desire of people to want to use the product. ACH is kind of a scary thing. People have never done it before. It feels a little backwards, if I'm honest. We have a really great system over here in the UK and Europe where you can just link directly to your banking app from whatever app you're in and send money directly from your banking app, and it goes via Bax. It essentially clears instantly, but in theory, it takes up to 3 days to clear. And it's very simple. So I think the more we're able to upgrade and update our onboarding system to allow different types of transfers and onboarding of cash, that will obviously be beneficial. The other thing I would like to note is that um, our onboarding system allows for added privacy in a way for communities, and that's all through the on-chain um, on-chain token system. Without ERC20s and ERC etc's, we could even essentially use any chain that we want, and we can more easily identify people who belong to certain communities, who participate, who have that NFT, and who can feel like part of a community. Imagine the Pudgy Penguins card. You just go to our website, connect your wallet, and there's all your stuff. Right? There's no onboarding necessary. So I think we have a lot of potential to really smooth out that onboarding system, and that's all thanks to Web3, really.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things I want to mention around that, specifically like that Pudgy Penguins use case, right now, Tom and I are working on in-app voting, and so it's just going to be because you have to sign into our app to actually make this possible. But it's just going to be for communities initially. But that's something that immediately after we kind of get it working correctly, we can kind of open that up to anyone who's using Snapshot, right? And it is that it's that first. I would say it's the first kind of like, hey, here's Web3 in a Web2 experience, right? And so we're still. I would say that there's probably a lot more work to do around the UX to make it like really Web2y. But then when we get to the point where it actually works pretty well, we're going to be able to do exactly those things that you said. Hey, you have Pengu or whatever. Just sign in here, and you'll get notifications every time there's like a governance update or something like that.
Realistically, we should have been working on a partnership with Pudgies from a year ago, and then we would have been airdropped a bunch of Pengu.
Yeah. Oh well.
But
Hindsight's 2020.
yeah, 2025. Here we go. So yeah, I don't know. Web3 brings a lot of potential for connections and partnerships, and I think that was one of the things that was so overwhelming about Bankless DAO initially was the onslaught of information and connections and people and protocols. And I mean, I was involved in so many different things personally. At one stage, I was invited to work on a DAO protocol, and I would have even imagined doing these things 2 years ago. So yeah, Web3 is a big world. It's slightly complicated, but once you understand the basics, then you can teach a million people how to use it themselves. So like the fact that we kind of collectively gather around education and technology and blockchain and payment compliance and whatever else it is we geek out on, I think just goes to show that there is interest in this area. And payments is something that still needs to be fixed. It's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like, I think like just partnerships in general, this is something I really realized during the Octant Accelerator. Like they were just like hyper, like they were themselves hyper focused on partnerships because that's the way that they wanted to increase their community. So like, similar to us in a way, like they were trying to create like a win-win for communities and themselves. But as a result, I also realized that it was just like way too much, right? Like ultimately, this idea of us having like hundreds of people on our app and managing all of those partnerships, like it's very difficult for me to really fathom how we can do that, or at least like let's say not how we can do that, how I can do that, right? Because I'm not one of those people who's terminally online. I'm not one of those people who even wants to be or thinks that that's like the kind of role that I want to set up for myself. I think it's really important for us to first of all understand what it is we truly want to accomplish so that we're not just kind of like chasing the shiny new thing, which I felt like I was doing a little bit of that during the accelerator, was always chasing the shiny new thing every week. And then second, once we understand that, putting some stuff in place so that when we make partnerships, it's easy for them and it's easy for us, right? Like, hey, here's a flow that works. You could go into it. Similar how we do our user onboarding. If we have like our partner onboarding in a way that is like pretty much self-serve, or it's very easy for them to have success. I think that
Yeah.
is something that we probably need to work on.
Links, it might even be a good idea to enable some sort of permissionless onboarding with obviously checks. I don't know to what extent we need to do KYB or KYC with any of our partners, if at all. This is why I think, it would be great to have somebody who could consult on compliance available. But realistically, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. Onboarding communities. If we made it more permissionless, we wouldn't necessarily have to handhold, and we wouldn't have people in our inbox saying, "Hey, let's get this going. How does it work?" Obviously, that's part of the maybe even part of the one pager. Explain to them how to onboard. Boom, done. A lot of it is done on chain. They obviously sign something on chain with us, and that's an agreement that gives them X percentage of whatever agreement there is. We have a couple different options for agreements as they're onboarding. Do you have a token? Do you want to use a different token? Do you want to donate directly to a charitable trust fund? Whatever it may be, all automated on chain. And we dabble in the fiat where we have to. But in like pretty much the only thing that touches fiat is the customer side. And then we just stick to on-chain donations, etc., where possible with our communities. I don't know. Does that help?
Yes. No, I think it helps. And I think for us to be able to do that effectively, we really need to understand the value that we're providing those partners, right? Like it needs to be like almost a no-brainer for partners. Yes, I understand the value that you're creating. And for us to do that, I think we need to spend more time. Well, I mean, so like to understand the value we can provide, we need to spend more individual time with partners, or let's call it one-on-one time with partners. I did get to do a little bit of this at the end of last season, but in general, I think like it's clear that the value that we're providing right now at this moment is not enough to get partners super excited, especially the kinds of communities that we're looking at. And so there's a couple things that we know that we're working on, and that voting's part of that. This endowment fund is part of it. But ultimately, I think that for us to explore that value with our partners is of top concern for us right now.
Yeah, I think keeping a strong focus on community, in terms of also features in the app, one-on-one with partners, making sure they understand what our vision is, because our, like this project is a nice slow simmer right now with a lot of basic necessities being built out over the last 2 years, including an on-chain foundation, a slew of multi-sigs, a group of people who we really trust each other. We've all met each other, and now we've reached that phase where onboarding has to be the next main focus. Focus on community, app features, one-to-one with partners to kind of make sure they understand. And then, as you said, Links, none of us are always online. We don't want to always be online. We need a break. And the more automated we can make this, again, back to the permissionlessness, onboarding on chain, and then allow the communities to just access the features, voting, connections with their NFTs. We really need to work towards connecting with POS or something that is at the payments phase, because that's where NFTs really shine, right? You walk into Walmart, you pick up a Pengu, you take it to the till, and you check out for free, right? Like that's how it's going to work realistically. You got the NFT. Does that make sense?
You use your BCard to buy a specific product, and boom, the NFT is already in your wallet.
Yeah, and we might even be thinking about this from the wrong perspective in terms of profit as well, because we're focused on this what I think may be a fading revenue source. Because, speaking of Walmart, they've been called out by the feds for having too much control over the payment flow, and all that cash that's being generated is going to get the squeeze. So by also focusing on communities, we can figure out how to sort of monetize their community without being vultures like Walmart taking a huge cut, but more integral to their community. And again, back to the features, providing whatever features it is they need to be able to either walk up to the register and check out for free, or to, get like NFTs are really limitless. Like I
Yep,
have whatever it is,
I
as soon as
agree.
we can facilitate that, or even just, a toll road thing. Like if we can connect to any of these connections, and yeah, the sky's the limit, really. So
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things that we've been like that has I think is like part of our positioning as well is this idea like what differentiates us from traditional financial companies and that kind of thing. This idea of shared revenue is really different. When you eat, we eat. Like that's the kind of thing. Every time we make you money, we also make money as well. That's the incentive that we're trying to create with communities. And that can work for any number of revenue models. And we have a couple of those that we've already discussed. We talked about a merch store. We talked about this endowment fund. We talked about like these card revenues. The intent isn't to throw it all on one revenue driver or anything like that. The intent for us is to bootstrap a network and understand this is something that everyone is trying to do right now. Okay, the reason why Visa is so useful is because they have a network that they've bootstrapped. Anywhere that you go, you can use your Visa card and you can be sure that people will accept it. Okay. And networks are harder and harder to bootstrap, but the reason why people are on Facebook, I mean, I'm not on Facebook anymore, but the reason why people are on Facebook is because all your friends are there, right? It's harder to leave. That idea of bootstrapping a network is really, really important. What we're trying to do is bootstrap a network of people who care about purpose over profit. And the bet that we're making is that that's going to matter more and more in the coming years. And I mean, I see it happening, right? Like when we see things like this United Healthcare killing. I mean, it's people who are railing against this idea of everything needs to be for profit, right? We need to understand how we're going to make that happen. We believe in community. We believe in purpose, right? This is the network that we're trying to bootstrap. And the bet is that that network will become more important over time. And so when we're looking at our revenue stream, it's important for us not to ever be vultures or predatory, as NF Thinker was saying, because that's against our values.
amen.
One of the things I want to say as well in terms of, oh, sorry, you know what? Go ahead, Drost. I'll keep mine for later. I've been talking forever.
No, you're on a roll. Go ahead. I've made notes. I can come back to it.
I was thinking, I think it's non-trivial and really huge. We got our first crypto curious community, Open Medicine Foundation. They are someone who is trying to get into the BioDAO kind of framework. We have some potential ways to help them. We have some ways to kind of they see as us as experts in the space. They see Web3 as a way of funding, and if we can create some engagement for them, if we can help them create engagement, that's a win-win. And so I think it's really important. Our goal, our foundational goal, is to bridge the UX gap between Web3 and the real world. And so if we can make this a success for Open Medicine Foundation, we can do this for a lot more crypto curious communities. And so I think it's no small feat that we have gotten them as a partner.
I was thinking with OMF, it would be a good idea to introduce them to the biohacking DAO. That's started by a guy that I've worked with before. His name is he goes by M Goes, and he was part
Goes
of like
distance.
fire. Yeah, M Goes Distance. Yeah, Yeah, and so he was part of the obviously the AMAs, as you probably know, links. Um, and he has started this biohacking DAO, which has Balaji on board and a bunch of other people who are sort of interested in the human longevity. So it might be interesting to like host an AMA or something like that with them. I'd be down to do that. Get a bunch of people on stage and talk about uh, on-chain communities, medical communities, obviously DeSci, etc., and just sort of start to form those bonds between the foundations, the 50, what do you call them, 503Cs,
501c3s.
501 501c3.
Yep.
Okay, right. So yeah, get some charities together and some DeFi projects together and kind of connect the dots that way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like not for profits is a big space for us, right? Because these are purpose driven communities, and it's exactly who we're trying to enable.
Okay, sounds good.
Roast, do you want to say your piece? I know that you unmuted earlier.
Sure. No, NF was talking about enabling person-to-person activity, right? I think he was talking about something like that. But I had written down peer-to-peer asset transfers, meaning either, you know, you don't necessarily want to have to give somebody your routing number and account number, but you know, I don't know how that's any different than giving them a 16-digit um, uh, uh, well, I'm trying to think of what EOA stands for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like public address.
Right. You know, you're still having to put in these numbers and stuff. Really, the only difference is the route it takes, right? And whether it's going through some traditional payment processor up and down the chain, or up and down the stack there on the traditional side, or you're using on chain and just doing a wallet to wallet transfer. I guess what I'm saying, I'm trying to think of, you know, once you've got people onto BCard, and whether it's a specific community or the group of communities, whatever it is, wouldn't it be nice? Let's say it's the nouns group, or it's whoever it is. It's you've got this subset of individuals that you know through connection or through the organization you're involved with, and one of the advantages there might be the ability to do very low or no cost transfers of either stablecoin or whatever. Primarily, I would think stablecoin, to doing a peer to peer rather than having to go through some middleman extractor, right? Of course, whatever network you're using, whether it's Base or whatever, you're still going to have to pay some small network fee. But you know, if you're using a low cost L2 or something, then maybe the organization can absorb that cost of the transaction. And the point is to facilitate peer-to-peer interaction, and then maybe being able to even do things like facilitate like group funding of things. You know, we're talking about the Black Flag Initiative. Well, this would kind of be a way to facilitate that too. So now you suddenly got this way of doing peer-to-peer transfers. What about an easy way to create the equivalent of a multi-sig that's not, using technical terms, and it's a much cleaner, much easier user experience. Basically a one click to set up a group party fund, and then you include the people, or people can opt in to contribute. There's all kinds of cool things you can do with peer-to-peer stuff when you've got a connected wallet. So one side is the ACH, but then you've got a connected wallet. And I know other organizations are trying to do this, like maybe crypto.com. The one I'm familiar with is Juno, which ended up having problems with their payment processor and shifting over, and then having the funds locked up for a while. And, I would say that would be probably one of our blockers, would be anyone who's maybe had experience with Juno or one of these other cards where they got their assets frozen for a while, might be a little skittish. But that's a different subject. I really like this idea of the peer-to-peer interaction. Another piece was, and I think NF had brought this up, was free stuff when you check out. I got to tell you, one of the coolest things at ETH Denver, I think it was last year, was they had these Web3 vending machines, and they had them the year before, but they were just demoing them. Well, last year they were actually using them, and so SporkDAO, they had a vending machine that if you owned a Buffycorn, you could get a free plush toy out of this machine. It was so cool. I mean, you didn't have to pay a dime. You just go up, you show your, it's scanned, it looks at your wallet, it goes, oh, okay, you hold a Buffycorn, and you can pick anything you want out of the machine. And the coolest thing they had in there was a plush toy Buffycorn. It looks like a $50 plush toy.
Yep.
That was, to me, I still remember that. That was one of the highlights for me. The rush of getting something for free out of a vending machine. I just can't tell you how awesome that is.
Yeah, and I think that it also like plays to our strength nicely. One of the things that we have over everyone else is that we have a card that people can use in real life, and we can, when something happens in real life, when they use that card, we can do things on chain with it, and backwards too, right? Like we can go like back, like we can if someone makes a transaction and we see that there's something on chain, we can kind of immediately refund them too, right? So it goes two ways, and that in real life connection, again, that is our strength. Leveraging that strength, I think, is really important because it's how we differentiate ourselves.
And we can play with all kinds of incentive structures. So, I think one of the biggest problems we've had is transaction volume, of course. I mean, to me, what's really exciting, one of the things that's really exciting is that when you talk about the number of communities we've onboarded, I mean, that's hella exciting. It's like, I mean, it makes a person do a double take and go, huh? You guys are a team of how many? And you have how many? And suddenly they're interested, but then you start talking about transaction volume and it's like, oh, right. And so that to me is the biggest hole, is the transaction volume. And how do we get that up? Well, people need a reason to use the card, need to use to generate transactions, need a reason to go into the app. And so maybe, there's all kinds of incentive ways you can think of, but one of the ways I'm thinking of is, low cost, or you can have a range of things. So at the lowest level, let's say coffee, free coffee. Let's say maybe for every 10 transactions you do, you get a free coffee at Starbucks or whoever the vendor is you're partnering with. Maybe it's Phil's if it's in San Francisco. Kind of stuff like that. And maybe one of the partner organizations is like, look, we're going to be in XYZ city for a conference, and we have partnered with these couple of organizations. If you use your BCard while you're there, you're going to get 10% off, or if you have or if you've done 10 or 20 transactions, if you own this NFT, or let's say there's a Chippy card and you own 10 Chippy in 5 locations. Well, maybe you get a free drink when you go to ChippyCon. I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, there's all
and
kinds of cool
I had put a lot of thought into the coffee community one as well. You mentioned, free coffee. Well, there is a DeFi project that I interviewed in Barcelona, and what they do is they go to small family-owned farms, coffee farms in South America, and they set up a DeFi fund where anybody around the world can put money directly into the fund. So let's say I put $10,000 in there into this DeFi fund. I get a percentage back, 5% or whatever that may be. And the growers actually are, they're getting access to banking, essentially, is what's happening. And they actually make a profit on it as well. There's a token involved. So one could imagine being a part of, let me go see what the name is because I should definitely know that off the top of my head. Ethic Hub. Yes, Ethic Hub. And, imagine you put $10,000 in, and then every time you go into an Ethic Hub supported cafe, you get a free coffee just because you've got your money sitting in there earning interest and, a free coffee to you. There might be other sorts of promotions available, but this is the kind of thing that really opens up sort of a new world for consumers. Privacy is obviously a huge issue. One advantage with Web3 is that you don't necessarily have to give out your identity for an on-chain wallet. Okay, so there is some pseudonymity baked in. That said, there's definitely room for improvement, and a lot of projects are working on that. But with on-chain promotions, you can offer things to people who have certain tokens and they can cash in on those things. So it's kind of like the opposite of what Tesco Points does. I was always inspired by my Tesco Points over here, but they're just selling all that data, right? And fine, you can sell the data if you're in that field and it's legal, but at the end of the day, the customer doesn't want to feel like the product, right? They want to invest in a community who doesn't treat them like a product, knows their data is not being sold on. There is that sense of pseudonymity, anonymity, while also being part of a community. So yeah, again, that also leads us back to compliance because privacy is extremely important. And, even down to like people posting in a Discord server, how safe is that information? So yeah, we need to definitely step up our privacy compliance in the near future too. But yeah, I love that idea, Drost, anyway.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Arkusti if you're able to, because I haven't heard from you yet. Sometimes it takes some.
Gotta
There you
find,
go.
yeah, gotta find my mic thing. Yeah, so I guess things that went well are, I think, I saw improvement on since the last retro was I think that the like the cadence, the amount of information, and the timing of the open medicine launch was a lot more of what I would expect a launch to be. So I think there was an improvement over like some of the other communities that we launched. In terms of the communication, I think like I feel like maybe the open medicine themselves weren't really at the stage where they were ready to like pick up on that, but I thought it was much more of what I would expect a launch to be. But I think going forward, it's a lot for like our small team to do, but I'm not sure if we're ready to like make a playbook or really automate that process, because we haven't seen like the campaign lead into the results that we're looking for. But I think it's definitely that's more in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think like the timing was definitely a little bit different, right? And so it's something that I think worked out pretty well for us. Anything that you think we can improve?
You can't really. Well, I mean, I think what like one of the challenges is to like working with the working async and part time and everything like that is to like keep people motivated. And then like how do you get like a camp like a when you have to do a campaign like for a big launch, how do you get that to work? And I mean, I think there's some answers in like having a playbook and automation, but I don't know if we know exactly what the formula is yet. So I mean, it's still going to require I don't know. I guess like the like keeping the team motivated. So figuring out, and like I'm talking about like a broader team, like who can like help out. So I guess it's the figuring out how to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like that motivation is a big factor, right? Like, I mean, you don't see Rainus here, you don't see Coffee Crusher here. Are they not motivated? I know Rainus got a new job, right? Coffee Crusher has a lot of stuff on her plate. I'm sure that they're like, yeah, I believe in BCard, and I suspect as well that they also, they're less motivated than other things going on in their life. So I do think that motivation is a big factor, and I think that it goes back to one of the things that we were saying in the past is that we're just not great at communication. I think that we're doing some cool things, and we're not great at sharing those cool things because I think that when a team is winning, people are drawn to that winning, right? And so we really need to continue to work on that motivating factor. Yeah. And so one of the things I just wanted to plus is that we spent some time looking at positioning and purpose. I think that that's also part of that motivation as well.
And Links, I realize we're at the top of almost the top of the hour here, but I just want to touch on that also. And I think there's a piece here that ties into that, which is, we don't want to shill our friends. And I think we've heard this from communities too. They want to participate, but they don't want to shill something and expose maybe demographic information about they're very protective of their community, right? And which is as they should be, and we are too. So how do we, I feel that's one of the blockers. And so how do we work around that? Because it's something that affects us too. I think we empathize with it because we feel the same way. And then there was another idea completely off the wall that I wrote down earlier in the conversation. Self-generated virtual gift cards. I don't know why I wrote that down, but it was back in the conversation about ways that you can facilitate group funding and things like that. Anyway, that was just a thing that popped into my head. But that's not wanting to shill your friends. I wrote down i.e. Amway. Who hasn't been contacted by an old friend that suddenly contacts you out of nowhere and you think they want to visit you to visit for coffee or have lunch, and what they're really doing is selling whatever new project they're on.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's the worst. I was a Cutco salesman way back in the day, and I was that guy. But I think the gift cards idea is a great idea because earlier in one of our meetings, I don't know if that was early December or late November, Drost, you were mentioning being able to fund like homeless communities or communities who need access to money without, and like obviously you don't want to go down the community food stamps type of road. It's kind of sad in a way when you think about the fact that it could just be like one more rung along the step to everybody being on UBI and having access to food stamps and limited number of steaks per week. We do not want to be that. We don't want to enable that type of behavior. We don't want to control what people purchase, but we also want to be able to enable communities to enable their members. So any way we can do that, I think gift cards, fantastic idea. NFTs, the world of wonders that is Web3. I think, we have a lot of potential ahead of us.
Yeah, I agree. We are coming on the end here. I mean, Shelby, I haven't heard from you. I know you haven't really worked on the project too much yet, but do you have any pluses or deltas you want to share with us?
Nope. You guys are very welcoming, so that's a plus.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right. And what about in terms of actions to improve? Anyone have any kind of actions there?
Like I said before, faster turnaround. I haven't prioritized it. It's kind of hobbyish, but I'm kind of taking things a little more seriously now, and it's a new year, so new priorities. And I've gotten a few other things cleaned up in my garbage bin of my brain. So, yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Anna.
Personally, I took a break at the end of last year, kind of from the point of July onwards. I just had a bit of a personal reckoning, and I'm still figuring things out. I will be on board. I'm going to be working on projects. I don't know what to sort of promise from myself towards the rest of the team coming up for Q1, but I'm still here, I'm still active, and I definitely want to see this project through to the very best. So I'm not going anywhere, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of me at some point very soon.
Nice.
And we'll be happy to see you.
Yes, we will indeed.
Happy to see you too.
I want to share.
+1.
+1. I want to share something. I've been researching a little bit, or rather, not as much researching, but looking up a little bit more about artists like the Beatles, artists like Prince, and what made them different, what made them successful. They are creative people, just like I believe everyone here is, just like I believe everyone can be if they really try. And so, what is it about these creative people that allowed them to be successful? One of the things I think that really inspired me is this idea of being finishers. They weren't about making things perfect. They were about making things done, getting it out the door, and getting it to the people. And by doing that, by getting more into this iterative state where they were releasing stuff more regularly, they were able to do things. They were able to get just better and better at their own craft. And so it wasn't necessarily that what they were putting out was good every time. It was just that through honing their craft, they were eventually able to create some really good things. For instance, Prince, he laid down all of the music and lyrics and everything for When Doves Cry in a day. He jotted down the lyrics on the hotel the night before. He came into the studio with his tech, and he laid down all the tracks. The tech did the snare drum on that, and she said, I could do way better than this. And he said, no, I lay it down like that. That's the way I like it. I like having that emotion in there. There is something about being able to get things across the finish line that makes you a better artist, that makes you a better creative. And it doesn't matter which discipline you're in, whether you're programming, whether you're creating audiograms, whether you're creating YouTube videos, whether you're creating spreadsheets or partnerships, getting stuff across the finish line makes a big difference into whether or not you'll be successful. It allows you to get better at your craft. And I think that that's something that I'm seeing as a theme of this. And it's something that I'm seeing as myself, something that I can do as an individual is just get that finisher culture going for myself as well. And so I just wanted to end off with that because I think in 2024 was our starting culture, right? We needed to start everything. We had a bunch of things that we needed to do. Now, 2025, we need to get a bunch of things out the door. And even if they're not great things, it will allow us to make great things later. What's up, NF Thinker?
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I love the anecdote about Prince and writing that song. I heard a very similar thing from Calvin Harris. He would just go in, write something, put it on the album. And he said, I think he had released something like 150, 200 tracks, 300 tracks. I don't know, a lot of music. And in the end, he said, I'm just successful because I release what I do. And it goes to show that you can't be overly self-critical. And that's part of being in a good team as well. At least when people are truthful and honest with you, you don't have to be self-critical. Just release. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So 2025, here we come.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tend to agree. I think that you have to get it out the door because the truth of the matter is it's definitely not good enough. And the only way to figure out how it is not good enough is by getting people to look at it and help you to make it better.
Yeah, and that can include this team, and that can include people outside the team. So if you're ever shy about sharing something, just know I believe in you. Even if you're putting something out that looks like total terrible, and you're embarrassed to put it out, I'll still look at it. Right? I'll do my best. I can't always do it very quickly, but I will look at it eventually. And I'm sure that there's a path to take that to make it something good, something you're proud of. And so even if you're shy to share something publicly, share it within the team. You know, we're a welcoming and accepting team and very supportive. All right, we're way over
And
time.
that's one of the reasons I stick around, Lynx, is, I think you exhibit those leadership qualities that, you encourage newcomers, you encourage whatever person can contribute, you reward, anyway, you exhibit a number of leadership qualities that I respect, and it makes me want to do better work. And to me, that's one of those things that defines leadership. It's, we do things for money, we do things for our own self-interest, but I think back to earlier in my career and a couple of managers I worked for, or even just peers. You want to do good work for them, and why is that? It's because they either inspire you some way, or they do things that you'd like to emulate. Anyway, I just wanted to, since we've been working together for so long, and it's a new year, we're wrapping up the past year. I just wanted to express that to you, Lynx. I know that you do a lot of work that's unsung and unpaid on a number of projects that may or may not go anywhere, and your continued optimism and your flexibility and openness and all of that are really valued. And I just wanted to express that.
Thanks, Dros. That's really nice to hear. I appreciate that. All right,
Heartfelt, my
team.
friend.
Happy 2025. I appreciate all of you. And I believe that this year is going to be the best year yet. So let's keep at it.
Let's do it. All right.
All
See
right,
you guys.
everybody. Let's keep building it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Build.
The
Let's
end
See you later,
team.
everyone.
Let's go BCard.
Let's
Let's
go.
go.